Hello folks, I'm Ed Overstreet and you're watching the Night Sky Imaging channel. Tonight we got a lot going on. I've got a planetary imaging rig that is a Smith Cassegrain 8-inch with a 2.5 times Barlow. It's actually a Teleview PowerMate. And on that is an ASI 224 planetary imaging camera, and we'll look at Saturn and Jupiter and take some pictures, process them, and we'll be doing that while another wide field kit is taking some deep space images. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go outside, take you outside with the outdoor cameras, and let me connect those and share my screen so that you can see it. And currently I have the larger telescope, which is the 8-inch Smith Cassegrain. It's a Celestron Edge 8-inch, and then I have the wide field Stellarview 330 millimeter that's parked right now, and we're going to find a target. We're going to go through the whole process of setting up a target and start an imaging session. Kind of show you how Sequence Generator Pro, or how I use it. But in the meantime, this telescope is currently looking at Saturn, and I'll just leave it alone for the time being, and once we get this telescope set up, find a target and start imaging, then we'll come back over here to this telescope and we'll start taking some pictures of Saturn. We'll be checking the scene conditions, which don't look very good right now, but we're pretty low on the sky, and the higher in the sky you go, the better the scene usually gets, but not always. Can you count on that? So with that being said, I'm going to take you to the Saturn live feed that's going on right now, and it's moving around some, but I'll be working on focusing that better, and hopefully we'll get some respectable images tonight. Sure counting on it. And then let's go to our other wide field kit, and I'll show you how that's going to set up. Let's close out this, and okay, we haven't picked out a target yet, so let's go do that. And I'm going to go to Sky Safari Pro 6. It's my it's one of the planetary software programs I use for finding a target, and I'm going to do narrowband tonight, just because I want to do narrowband. I imaged M33 last night, and I finished up the Wizard, the Veil Nebula, last night, not the Wizard, and so I had both narrowband and broadband imaging going on, and tonight I think I'm going to go with something. I was going to go to SH2 129, but I think because it shows a lot of nebulosity, I'm just going to go to the Elephant Trunk Nebula, which is IC 1396, and it's a huge swath of sky. So let's move over to our wrong kit. Right kit. So one of the things that you must do when you start using Sequence Generator Pro is you have to put together what's called a profile, and it is essential before you run any kind of imaging attempt. And the profile consists of your mount. If you have a focuser, your focuser, your camera, and your telescope. And so the software needs to know what kind of gear you're using It needs to know camera sensor size and pixel scale. All of that's easy to find on the internet. And the mount, because the drivers have to be connected, because this software controls the mount, the camera, the focuser, the many other things as well. But essentially, when you look over here, we have the camera, the filter wheel, the focuser, and this is the mount. I use EQ SCOM. I use the SCOM drivers because it has what I feel like is a very easy to use hand controller, and that's what this SCOM hand controller from EQMod looks like. I can use north, east, south, west pulses and move the telescope. I can create periodic error curve corrections with this, and this is my outside software wanting to know if I want to put it to sleep. No, we'll just keep it going. Okay, and so this software is to me, it's become part of me, and I would hate to have to image without it. So I'm going to put it to sleep here for a minute. So we decided on IC 1396, and so I have to pick a I have to tell Sequence Generator Pro what gear I'm using. So I'm going to go to File, a new sequence with a profile. So I've created my profiles. This is the camera that I'll be using, the ASI 1600. This is the mount, the Atlas Pro mount, and these are the different cameras and telescopes that I have. So I mean different telescopes. This is the camera, the mount, and these are the different telescopes that I can use. So I'm going to be using the SVT, the Stellar View 336, and I have a Pegasus power box attached to that. So I'm going to click on that. In another video, I plan to go into how you create a profile for Sequence Generator Pro. So we've loaded the right gear. I'm going to go ahead, I've connected the cameras. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on and start cooling. These cameras have cooling systems to cool the sensor, and when you're taking long exposure photography, you get thermal noise in the sensor. The electrons are exposed to a good bit of heat, and it causes some noise or static looking grain in your images. So these coolers, these camera cooling systems, help to cool the sensor to minus 40 degrees, as much as minus 40 degrees below ambient. So if it's 80 degrees out, you can cool it to 40. If it's 30 degrees out, you can cool it to minus 10. And you really don't need to go to those extremes. And tonight I'm just going to cool to minus 15 degrees Celsius, and that's below, again, ambient temperature. So we decided we're going to image the elephant truck, which is IC 1396. So I mean the North American Nebula. So we're going to go to Tools, and we're going to come down to Framing and Mosaic. And I'm going to add my object, which is IC 1396, and I'm going to fetch it. There's the RA and DEC address. It's already found it, and when it stops clocking, it will have loaded it. Alright, it's loaded it, so let me alright, this is going to be our target, and it is the elephant truck. And so I'm going to draw a box, and because I entered my camera sensor size, by the way, just made a decision. I don't want to image IC 1396 because I just did it. Let's go back to the sequence has been created. You sure you want to exit? Yes. All right. let's go back to our planetary software and let's go to the North American Nebula. That's NGC 7000. So we're going to go up here to the North American Nebula and NGC 7000. Now back to our software, not Saturn, but Tools. We're going to go to Framing in Mosaic. We're going to go to NGC 7000 and we're going to fetch it. That's one way to get the data in. This is also a huge swath of sky, and it's found it. And so I think I'm going to image this part right here. And let's frame it. Alright, that's how I'm going to frame it. And that's what we're going to image right there. Okay, I'm going to go create a sequence. And it says, do you want to replace the target? And I do. Or a pin add to the target. I don't want to rotate. I want to leave it just the way it is. And I'm going to go ahead and call this and I'm going to put today's date, which is 9/13/21. And yes, I want to create a target. So we now have the target. It's been added right here. I'm going to find a place to store my files. So I have a external hard drive. I'm going to 9/13/21, and this is going to be NGC 7000. The 70T, and that's all I want. So there's a directory. Our camera's cooling. Now we have to set up a sequence. So I'm going to take lights in hydrogen alpha. So I'm going to bring up the filters. These are the filters that I have currently. I have luminance, red, green, blue, hydrogen alpha, O3, and S2. The last three are what are called narrowband filters. They allow a narrow band pass for light to pass through, and so it's good for gathering data from nebulas, but it's not good for, say, galaxies. For galaxies and stars, star color, you're going to want your RGB, and you'll run luminance on a lot of your RGB images in order to enhance the contrast and the sharpness in your image in post-processing. So we're going to put we need something to label our file name, so it's HA, not too complicated, and we're going to have O3. Let's go ahead and add the O3 filter, and we're going to take S2, and let's add S2. Alright, these are going to be 5-minute exposures, or 300 seconds. And I need to find out something. When we looked at our planetarium software, we see where the North American is pretty high in the sky, and it's going to cross this green line, which is the northern meridian, and it's going to cross this. It transits at 10:54. I'm looking over here where it says transit, and when it does, then the weights on my telescope, they're on this weight bar, and the telescope's on one end, the weights are on the other end to provide balance. And when it gets here, the weights become higher than the telescope, and it can cause eventually the telescope to bang into your pier or your tripod. So you have to do a flip. You have to just flip it around so that the weights are on the other side, and then flip it with the telescope. And that's called a meridian flip or a pier flip. So at 10:54, I'll have to do a pier flip. Well, let's bring our software back up, not Saturn, but the North American. And also, I can go to, I'll click on North American here, the gear, and down here where it says planning tools, it says that it's going to transit at 11:01. Well, I have 10:54 on my Planetarium software, 11:01, so around 11 o'clock it's going to do a pier flip. Now, because I give Sequence Generator Pro total control over my imaging, I disable all other software that could initiate a pier flip, like EQ ASCOM. That's disabled, so that the Sequence Generator Pro, my acquisition software, will control it, and it will transit, it will flip the mount at 11:01. Right now, this is the path that the target NGC 7000 is taking. It is currently at 81 degrees altitude. So it's going to reach here, do a flip, and then it's going to fall towards the horizon on the other side of the meridian. And that's what's going to happen tonight. So let's close this out. And right now I want to bring up my outside cameras because I want to watch as this telescope heads to the target. And we're going to slew to it now. And so let's bring it up. And oh heck, it shut down. So let's bring it up. Now it's moving over towards the target. And it's close, but I want to make sure it's dead center on the target as I framed it in the framing mosaic. So I'm going to center it. And at this stage, the software is going to take a picture of the sky. And it's going to compare it to a catalog that's been installed on the computer that has essentially all the stars in the sky cataloged, and it's going to compare it to that catalog, and it's going to move the mount if needed so that can be centered. And right now we're over 1,000 pixels off from center in right ascension, and we're 29 pixels off in declination. So it's going to take another picture, it's going to move it again, and okay, now we're 3 pixels off in right ascension, we're 10 pixels off in declination. A total of 11 pixels off is what it amounts to from dead center. And I have set up this software to plate solve until I'm within 50 pixels. That's close enough for me. And we're now within 13 really, or 11 pixels in total error. So we don't need to run it again, and we are on our target. So at this stage I need some guiding support, and I'm going to click on PhD2, which is guiding software. I'm going to start looping, and looping means that the camera, the guiding camera on top of the guiding camera is attached to a guide scope, and it rides tandem on top of the main scope. And it's got one job, and that is to take continuous pictures of the sky. And in doing so, it's going to focus on a series of stars. And if this mount should happen to move off pixel, it's going to, the guiding software is going to send a correction to the mount to recenter it back on that pixel. So it's an attempt It's actually a centroid in a star, but it's an attempt to make sure that your mount stays right where it's supposed to be throughout the imaging session. So we're going to start guiding, and it has found these stars as a reference, and these stars are going to be used to initiate the guiding program. It's going to be rough at first until it settles down, but then it should settle down to under, say, 0.70 RMS. And that's good enough, actually under 1.5 RMS for this extremely wide field kit works fine. But this particular one will eventually be guiding it under always under 1. Okay, let's go back to our Sequence Generator Pro, and now we have the North American Nebula. Our camera has cooled to the target, which was -15, and so we're at -15 degrees Celsius, cooling the camera sensor, and we're going to go ahead and start running. Oh, I got to set up how many images I want to take. Alright, let's try 20 tonight. Let's try 20 images of HA, 20 of O3, and 20 of sulfur, and that's going to be an hour and 40 minutes worth. Let's add let's go to 30. That's 2 hours and 30. Let's add 30. Let's just go to 30 each. Let's make sure we have these two checked, because it's going to start with hydrogen alpha, take 30 5-minute images, and then it's going to switch filters from hydrogen alpha to O3. It's going to take another 30 images, each 5 minutes long. Okay, we're at 7 hours. I don't know, it took a while to get there. I knew something was haywire. Let's go back to 20. That's going to be, we can sleep now. So, all right. So we have 5 hours and 50 minutes worth of imaging ahead of us. Let's go ahead and run our sequence. And so it's going to slew to the target again. It's going to recenter it. It's going to have to set the filter, and it's moving the filter now. And now it's going to run a focusing routine. So it's going to, I have an electronic focuser attached to the telescope, and it's going to take a series of pictures at different, racking both out and racking the telescope back in. It's going to take a series, and it's going to determine what the best focus is. It measures the half flux radius of the star. So it's defocused. The focuser has defocused the telescope a great deal. Took a picture, and you can see it's out of focus when you look at the stars. Way out of focus. There's your nebula back there, by the way. It's out of focus. This takes a few minutes because each image is about 18 seconds long on narrowband. So it's taken another image, but it's moving the focuser closer to where it was. So it's a little sharper. And as you can see, this is the measure on the left, on the vertical side. This is the measure of the half flux radius of the star. That's from the centroid out to the edge of the stars. So it's measuring an average of all of these stars, and it's recording that. So far the H half flux radius is about 10.10. It's about 10. Now it's gone down to 5.2. And as soon as it gets back closer to where it was, because it was pretty close to being in focus, then it's going to start racking the focuser in the other direction, defocusing all the way. And there will be a vector, an intersection, and at that intersection is the ideal focus point, and it will set that. I have the Sequence Generator Pro set up. The profile that I set up for this gear is designed to refocus every 2-degree temperature change and on every filter change, because my filters are not what are called parafocal. Each filter is slightly off focus wise from the previous filter. So each time there's a filter change, I refocus, and each time the temperature drops, either or goes up 2 degrees, I refocus. Okay, it's starting to build the curve that's going to create really the intersection, and now it's starting to rack back in the other direction, and it's going to start defocusing in the other direction. The half flux radius went down as far as 1.6, and the position of the focuser was 11,326. Down here along the bottom are the steps that this has moved from. It went out to 11,530. No, it went out to 11,606, and then it came back down to 11,326. Now it's going back in the other direction. It's going in now. So the focuser is moving out, and it's coming back and moving in order to determine the absolute best point of focuser. So within a 90% margin for quality, it's pretty sure it's finding the best focus, and it's going to look like it's going to be around 11,352. And here's the focus function in Sequence Generator Pro. Currently it's on 11,116, but it's going to well, now it's saying it's 11,351, but it's about to complete its job. They'll take a validation focus shot to validate its findings, and then we're going to be off in imaging. Okay, now it will take a validation exposure, and within a 95% quality estimation, it looks as though it's going to be 11,344. So you can see it's already set it over here to 11,344, and that will be the step size for the focuser as we start out. It'll change over the course of the night as the temperature drops. And what happens is that the inside of the optics cool, and just like all metals and all glasses, they expand and contract. Okay, now we've had some time when we've been focusing, so it's a good chance that the mount may have moved slightly off of center, so it's going to plate solve again and recenter the target. It won't take it long because it hadn't gone very far. Alright, it's already found it, it's centered it, and now it's going to start the auto guider back down here on the green at the bottom. It says resuming the auto guider. So this software controls PhD2. I say it doesn't necessarily, well it does, it starts it, stops it, but PhD2 is independent software. Can be used with all kinds of acquisition software, but in this case, Sequence Generator Pro will handle all of the essential starting, stopping, dithering requirements that I'm going to have. Now I will have to go back and forth to the guiding software and check certain things like exposure time I'm going to be using, which I might change. I may change the minimum movement and a few other things that are hysteresis, but unless I run the guiding assistant, I usually don't fool with those things. Okay, we've started our first 300-second image. We're at 262 seconds and counting. We're counting down. So while that's doing its thing, let's go over to Saturn and see if it's still there, and it is. So let's see if we can't. I don't want to defocus that much. Let's defocus to there, and then let's we're going to run the gain up to 350. 351's fine, and we're going to run the exposure down to about there. And wow, our frame rate's really low. What's going on here? Alright, let's go. Well, we'll just take a low frame rate. Alright, we want a different region of interest, so I'm going to grab, this is called Sharpcap software, and I'm going to grab a different region of interest here. I don't want to photograph and spend my imaging time gathering dark sky. So I just really want to get Saturn. So I'm going to go like 400 by 488 by 488. Okay, it's all right, let's go up to capture. And before we do that, let's change the target to Saturn. I want to make sure that I have my settings to save to I have those right. Okay, let's go up to our capture. We're going to start capture, and we have Saturn picked. I want to take images. I want to take a 3-minute image. I want to let's take 6 of them, and the interval I want that to be 10 seconds between images. So I want to take as many I'm going to take 3 minutes of video, and I want to take as many frames as I can at the rate of 29 frames per second, which I'm looking down here, and that's a function of exposure. The lower I can make my exposure, the faster, the more frames I can gather. So let's start it, and we're going to start an imaging run. So we are capturing right now we're capturing 400 and 500 frames at 29 frames per second, and we'll see how many we can get in 3 minutes. And the only reason why I don't go longer is that the planets rotate, and if you're not careful, and if you take too long of an exposure, and I think I limit this to 3 minutes on Saturn and 2 minutes on Jupiter, then your target's going to be blurred by its own rotation. While we're doing this, I want to open up a software program called WinJupos, and I want to see what Jupiter's doing tonight. We have our let's see here, let's go back here, and before I do that we have 6 seconds left on our first image, so let's see what they're going to look like. We're downloading it. Okay, let's alright, this is that was awfully zoomed in. This is our North American nebula. It is rich in hydrogen, and this is what one image that I've taken for 3 minutes is going to look like, and we're going to stack those 30 or 20 we have taken. Well, I'm going to image it again tomorrow night and do the same. I'm going to have 10 hours of data before I start doing any processing. You can see that the half flux radius is 1.91. That is the definition of my scene for tonight. Scene conditions equal half flux radius for this kit. You hear about what is scene and how can you quantify it? Well, that's it. So, and it's actually decent. Alright, now I want to find my, there's another laptop that I have that's outside, and let me move it out here, and it's not online with anything, but I have Castrator opened up here. I want to open up WinJupos, and I want to go to the tool Ephemerides, and I want to click on real time. And so this is what Jupiter looks like right now. This is the real-time view of Jupiter, and I want to advance the time. Okay, there's the great red spot. So at 5:11 universal time, you have to minus 4 hours off of universal time for Eastern Standard. So that means at 1:11, 11 minutes after 1, I can start imaging Jupiter and get this red spot. This is just a great planning tool. And at 1, and then 3 hours later, that red spot will have crossed. But that gives you an idea of how this planet rotates. It makes a complete rotation once every about 8 hours and 55 minutes, or close to 9 hours. Whereas our days 24 hours and change. Okay, we can go now back to let's go back to Saturn. We're flip-flopping back and forth between Saturn and the North American Nebula. And we've already taken, this is our second or our third image we've taken. So let's open up one of the images, and I'm not going to run pip or castrator and run a sitter, and I'm just going to go ahead and find this Saturn. It's been saved. Let's see, we're in our external hard drive, and okay, we have 2. So here's the first image, and it looks terrible, doesn't it? That's okay. Let's analyze it. Let's first scrub through it a little bit. And this is the video, and I've got a scrubber up here. I'm just kind of moving it along. I want to see if I can find a better reference frame. I can use my arrow keys too. Okay. Alright, let's just try there, analyze it. And this is a program called Autofocusing. And Autofocusing will take every one of those videos, evaluate them, and give it a quality rating. And from that I'll determine how many of those frames I want to stack into one image. So it's telling me, as I watch this line, green line, pass from high left to bottom right, it crosses, it just happens to cross about halfway through all of the images that were taken. Some of the images are good, some of the images are not good, and I don't want the ones down here. In fact, what I would like to have is the ones that are above about this line right here. So I'm going to pick the top, say 35%. Now, if I wanted to, I could say I want the top 25%, 10%, and 60%, and just compare them and see how they look. I need to place alignment points, and I'm just going to let the software automatically do that. So I'm going to check close to edge and hit place, and there they are, and I'm going to accept that. Now I'm going to stack these images. And this is the long part right here where you see stacking. Once that's done, it's essentially over. Took 14 seconds to buffer them, 4 seconds to identify the reference frame, align the reference frame, and then now that's stacking all those images based on that reference frame, and it's done. Okay, so we're just going to close this out. We're not probably going to process any more of those, and let's go to Registax. I use the software so often I keep it all handy on my taskbar. These laptops are only used for astro imaging. Let's go to select, and that was yesterday. Let's go to I call this the 14th because the lion's share of this work is going to be after midnight, so I picked the 14th. Let's open this up. Let's go to Saturn, and that, by the way, you see where it says 35? That's the folder that I created where I kept the top 35%. And had I selected 55 and 25, we'd have different folders with different quality of images culled and stacked in that folder. So we have one image. Let's bring it up. Having a problem with Registax doing that every time I try it once, and then the second time it doesn't do it. I don't want to stretch it. Okay, there is our TIFF image. Now let's show the full image, and one of the things we need to do first is to auto balance the colors, and so it's more inclined to look color wise like this. It's kind of dark, so I'm going to brighten it up some. So I'm going to go over to histogram, and I'm going to raise it to about there. And also, I don't like the orientation because north is down and I want north up. So I'm going to flip it, and it probably needs to be about 150. And let's try it. Yep. So now north is up, and the North Pole's here, and it's on an angle that to me best represents how Saturn sits in the sky, in my opinion. But because my camera's rotated differently, and that's the only reason why it was rolled around the other way. Okay, I'm not going to apply any curves to it, which would be this gamma slider, and I'm not going to do any denoising. I'll do that in Photoshop for the most part. So let's load Saturn scheme and apply some wavelets, and there we are. It does need some noise reduction, and I'll go over here and give it a couple clicks. And kind of smooth out some of the noise, but we're running at 350, a gain of 350, and the more you raise the gain, the noisier your image is going to be. But this will just kind of give you an idea of Saturn after we've taken about 3,000 or 4,000 images and stacked the best 35%. So let's get rid of that. I don't want to save it. Nope, don't want to save it. We're going to leave, actually, let's go over and see Jupiter. I'll show you, this is another planetarium software that I keep on the laptops because it takes such little memory. But here's Saturn right here, and Jupiter's right beside it. And if you go outside and you look in the west, about 150 degrees just west of due south, you'll see both of them, and they're going to look higher in the sky than they actually are. But the brighter one obviously is Jupiter. So let's click on Jupiter. Let's go there. I don't know if it's going to go there or not. I'm using the slew button up here. Let me see here. Alright, I know it's Saturn, or Jupiter. Alright, let's slew. There it goes. And you can see it moving there. And if I had you looking at my outside kit, you would be able to watch it slew there. Okay, yes, I know guiding stopped. Alright, we're going to have to do a better job of centering. This is Jupiter, and this is one of its moons right over here. And so I happen to know that it needs to be moved a little little west. And let me drop this down to about 2 seconds. 2/10 of a second, and let's bring up my hand controller again, and let's go north a little bit. Are we looping? Let's stop. Let's start looping, and let's go back, and let's go north. There we go. And let's go west and north. I happen to know that my finder scope's a little haywire, so let's see if we're close. There it is. Let's change our region of interest. Well, I'm not getting much success with alright, we want to go, and we want to go north. This is a much brighter planet, and let's center it. Too much. Drop it south a tad. Too much. Too much. Let's drop the speed to sidereal instead of 2 times sidereal. Alright, now let's take PhD 2. Let's start looping. We've already looping. Let's start finding some stars, and let's just go ahead and guide. Yes, I know I need another dark library. I'm not doing it right now. Let's go back to our software. Let's bring our gain down to 250. And let's bring our exposure down to, it's going to actually look a little dark, about right there. So now what I want to do is I want to go to, it's already started capturing, and I want to stop it. And hang on a minute, stop. And I want to change my target to Jupiter, and I want to start capturing, and here we go. And I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to go ahead and take a 3-minute video. I normally only take a 2-minute video. When you see the planet jump like that, that's my guiding software, which I needed to disable probably. it works sometimes to my advantage and sometimes it doesn't. When I'm running two kits, I usually guide, because I may leave one kit alone for a long time, and when I do, it could drift out of the frame. I might be spending more time with the other kit imaging, so it doesn't really I really don't have to guide on the planets, but if I'm going to step away, go watch television, or just leave it alone for the rest of the night, I'll guide just to make sure it's staying pretty close in the center. And then software recenters everything. Even though it may move around some on the screen, it's not a problem, because Castrator or software like Pip or Castrator will recenter all your frames. I didn't use that a while ago, but when I start processing all of these, I will. Now the scene conditions are looking pretty good right now, and I kind of had a feeling that they might, because going back to our other, not that one, but going back to our other scope, we're getting, well, we're at 1.95, so the scene over the North American Nebula has gotten a little worse, and that could be due to anything between here and that nebula, thermal activity, just atmosphere. We consider how far away this is, and let's go find out exactly how far away that is. North American Nebula was discovered by William Herschel, and it's 100 light years across, and it's 1800 light years away from Mother Earth. So if you could travel at the speed of light, and which is 186,000 and change a second, that's like going around the world at the equator 7.5 times in 1 second. If you could travel that fast, pack you a lunch and pack dinner, because you'll have 1800 years before you're going to get there, and you're going to have to maintain that speed. You can't stop and use the facilities. It's a good ways away, but it's actually reasonably close in relatively speaking. Some of the targets are billions of light years away. Okay, let's go back to Jupiter, and we've taken I know at least one or two of those, and let's take another. Let's start capturing again. This time let's go to 2 minutes, and let's take, I'm going to let this run for a while. Take 20 of those, and let's go to, I'll show you how Castrator works now. I'm going to open up a file. I'm going to go to the 14th. That's tonight. Hadn't happened yet. I'm going to go to Jupiter, and I'm going to take this one that was jumping around, and I could frame this. I'm going to give it a little more real estate around it, but I want to chop out all the dark sky, and I just want to focus on Jupiter, and I'm going to process in color. This is a one-shot color camera, so I'm going to process this. And what Castrator is going to do, like Pip, it's just going to align all of these AVI files, and it makes it so much easier for AutoStacker to run faster. So it's done, and now we're going to go to AutoStacker, and we're going to open this file, and it's going to have a suffix called let's go in here, and no, it's not in there. It's this one right here. Nope. We're on Saturn. We got to go to Jupiter. Alright, here it is. It's the big one. It's got CSTR, which is the suffix to identify it as a castrator file. It's a heck of a name. I don't know how it got its name. So here we are, and we've cut out all the sky. So we're really just looking at the planet. So we need to analyze it, but let's scrub through it very quickly and see if there's any really sharp. I'm looking at the bands. I actually look at the bands towards the North Pole, and by the way, this needs to be flipped too. Oh, okay, nope, not good. Better. Alright, let's do this. We're going to analyze it, and by the way, I click on planet. If I was doing the sun or the moon, I'd have surface. Laplace is checked. I use a pretty high noise robust number. I think the default is either 3 or 4, and I run it up pretty high. I have local checked when I analyze, and auto size. So the quality graph is considerably better, but I'm only going to keep 60%, the best of the best of these. I need to set my alignment points. I'm going to click on 104 instead of 48. That's the distance in pixels between these points, these boxes. I'm going to place a grid, and I'm going to have RGB align checked. I'm going to save, of course, in these folders. I'm not going to add sharpening, and I don't have normalized stack checked. I'm not drizzling either, so I'm stacking. This will go much quicker than Saturn because I ran it through castrator. Of course, you got to consider the time castrator takes, which wasn't much. So it's done. But I do a lot of batch processing where I load like 20 or 30 of Jupiters all at once. So it'll go through them much quicker if I've already ran them, batched them through castrator. Okay, we're done. Let's get rid of it. Let's bring up Registax. By the way, castrator, AutoStacker, Registax, it's all free software. They ask for a donation, and I gladly do, but it's all free. Let's go select, and we've got to go to Jupiter. We're at 60%. There's our image. See, it refuses to accept the first attempt to open it. I don't know what's going on. Nope, don't want to stretch. Okay. Let's show the big image or the full image. And so first thing we want to do is color balance. And so we don't need that anymore. I want to flip it, and that's going to be 130, 125. And I just know, because I know how my camera's oriented, and that's how I can dial that in. I've done this before so much. I'm going to probably, I don't know if I'm going to add, yeah, I'm going to add a little light or a little luminosity to it, and we'll stretch it. And so I really don't need that anymore. And now we're going to load a scheme. I'm going to use, I think I'm going to stay with the S2 scheme, which is I use for Saturn. and that's a noisy one. So let's bump up this. Actually, I never really do use the noise algorithms in these wavelets. I usually just take care of it in Photoshop. I like a software program by Topaz called Denoise, but in the name of you're watching this and the tool's handy to have, and I'm not saving it. And you can also add sharpening to this. All these wavelets are slid as far right as you can go, but you can add sharpening to the image. But my frame rate's not very high. I would like to have about 8,000 to 10,000 frames to process for this image. But at any rate, there we go. And no, we're not saving it, so let's exit out. Nope, don't want it. And we're still taking pictures right now. If you look at the bottom left, we're capturing 1600 and going. Let's see how many we take. On the bottom right, that green is the progress bar, so we haven't hit the halfway mark, and we're at 2,000. So it looks like we're going to be about 3,500 at the halfway mark. And then that means we're doing about 7,000 frames in a 2-minute period. So now we're over halfway. No, it's going to be about 6,000 frames in a 2-minute period. So that's what it is at the rate of 44 frames per second, which is not good. This could be up to 100 frames per second. Now, some of my friends who've coached me in how to be a better planetary imaging person, Josh Palmer with Roper Mountain Astronomy, he's always advised planetary imagers to run their histogram to about 40%. In other words, drop your exposure to where it's not at the 50%, and just look at the white line, forget the other colors, but 40%. And same thing with Saturn. So it looks darker, but you can always add some luminosity back to it in post-processing, but it gets your frame rate up. So my frame rate went up from 44 to 53, so 10 more frames, so you can stack more good frames, and that's much more important than luminosity. So he's right, and I don't pay attention to that, but don't trust your eyes and the brightness that your eyes identifies. Trust this histogram down here so that you adjust your exposure accordingly. In fact, I could probably come down to say 17 milliseconds, and I would probably be wise to go ahead and boost this up to 300 and take this down to 11, and now my frame rate's 90. And I've got to remember that this is 147-8. I'll have to delete that video because while it was capturing, I changed everything. So 140, I'm making a note. 147.8. Pin. Okay. All right, I know how to. Okay, well guys, I don't know if there's anything else much to cover. This is the Sharpcap software that I use. I use both Fire Capture and Sharpcap. I like Sharpcap better. I take AVI files and not SCR files. and when I'm taking AVI files, I always make sure that in my settings that the file names have checked create WinJuPost compatible file names, because if you're going to take planetary images, then you're going to ultimately have to account for the rotation. If you're going to get a good Jupiter, then you have to take, you remember after I had processed that one in Registax, I need 6 or 7 or 8 of those stacked together, and then I'll be working with an even more detailed, less noisy image. But you're going to have to derotate them, and that's what WinJuPost does. WinJuPost allows you to enter all your images, and because the dates are embedded in the software by Sharpcap and FireCapture, then WinJuPost reads those dates, and it will move those planets so that they're aligned perfectly as if they didn't rotate. And that allows you to take, say, 10,000 frame AVI files, and over a period of 14, 15, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, and derotate them into one really nice image. So you can see one image takes a lot of work if you're going to get it really, really good. But that's the fun of it. So, okay, I've probably corrupted and confused, and if I did, man, I hate that. But these things, one thing about a video, you can watch it over and over again. And where I may mess up, when you do live videos, I hate going back and listening to what I've done, because I'll catch myself saying Jupiter when I'm really working on Saturn, or calling the target another name, or just insane things come out of your mouth and you don't realize it, particularly the later it gets in the evening. So, and this is a hobby that takes you well into the evening. But I'm one to keep a pot of coffee going until I'm ready to go to bed. All right, guys. Well, listen, make sure you say something good to somebody tomorrow, or if you got time left today, say something nice to somebody. You're going to feel better for it, and you're going to make their day. With that being said, see you guys later.